This is going to be a video. I should welcome you back to school. Um, this is gonna be a video about the history of my musical endeavors. As I am beginning to post uh, clavier practice videos, I think I should probably let you know exactly a little bit about my history without trying to go into too much depth about the shop of it all, the lingo and all that stuff. So, let's start off when I was really, really young. Um, Sixth year, I think about, I got a uh keyboard. I think it was like 61 keys. I don't know, but it was nothing. It was just your average keyboard. Um, and that was what I learned how to play. My stepdad taught me where middle, where the pitch D was, um, and um, in solfege that would be the pitch re. Uh, and so after that, I just figured everything else on my own. At this time, I was in music class in seventh year. It was like studying basic history and theory and piano and a little bit of composition. Um, so I was learning a little bit from that, and I was also singing in the choir at the school. Um, I never really had formal piano lessons or music lessons except like, you know, uh stuff whatever was at the school. Um the let me see here. I sung in the elementary choir my 6th year. Um and I think that was when I like can officially say that I started to learn, a little bit about music. Prior years before that, we had music class, but it was basically singing songs and doing little fun activities. We learned a little bit about um, intervals, which for non musicians, an interval is just from one pitch to another on in music sound. Basically, they are the building blocks of musical melodies and things like that. So, yeah. Um, I'm trying to think. Okay, so that was like my freshman. No, that was like junior high. Uh, when I got into high school. Oh, I should mention when I was in 8th year, that was when I started to pick up piano like more seriously. I remember learning a little bit about key signatures at this point. Um, Learning about like the chopsticks. At that point, they had the Titanic craze going on, so I was playing the love. They call it the love theme from the movie. Learning that, playing that. Um, even I think that was happening a little bit before in, well, let's see. Titanic came out in, what is it, 1998? So, yeah, I had to have been in 8th year at that point, but I remember getting the sheet music and we were at the other school. So I don't know. I honestly I don't know. But anyways, Titanic was going on. And I remember singing it in the choir. That had to have been my 7th year because I remember asking the music teacher if I could sing soprano just so I could sing the melody on that song. Um, so yeah, that had to have been my 7th year. The Titanic thing was going on. So I would play the love theme to that. My heart would go on. I'd do chopsticks. I'd do all these, little simple stuff. Um, I also learned that there was a piano list for solo and ensemble, which is a music thing that they do for the schools or whatnot. Like there's district and then there's state, which I think is the highest it goes. So like if you get like a start first on your solo, or your ensemble group gets a start first, then you would go to state and you would, basically refine your piece of music, and then you would go and you would sing again or play again, and you'd get another award for that. I had a couple of my piano, actually I think one piano piece and one vocal piece. Everything else was pretty much within like first category. I think I got 1/3, and that was because like I was in a group and the group really didn't care about the piece. And the song was really good too. It's like Bach's Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. Um it was a 3-part chorus thing on that. Um but yeah, so back to piano and keyboard. I was learning about key signatures. By the time I got to ninth grade, ninth year, whatever, um, I was starting to dive into classical music. Like I had got a CD. I should mention that my family, like mom and parents, whatnot, they're not musically inclined. Like they don't know an eighth note from a quarter note. They might, but they're not. I mean, just basic, bare bone basic. They don't appreciate music for what it is. Um, they listen to music for enjoyment, and that's about as far as their musical abilities go. Um, so yeah, so I'm coming from a non-musical background. So we got that from the get-go. In my ninth year, uh I I think it was a little bit before my ninth year. I had I got a CD that had a bunch of, classical piano music, and that was when I started to learn about uh Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, all these Tchaikovsky's, Tchaikovsky, all these different composers of piano music, and so I started to get exposed to that through audio CDs. um, so I learned the Moonlight, the opening movements of the Moonlight Sonata. Für Elise was on that list, or was on the CD. The Raindrop Prelude, Claire de Lune, I was on there. Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, just different variety of piano music that is nice, like dinner piano music. Nothing too bombastic. So that was like where I started to learn about these composers and learning about Haydn, not Haydn, but Handel writing the entire what do they call it? Handel's Messiah. When I was in freshman or thereabouts, I think it was a little bit after freshman, I was like, Handel wrote this whole thing. I mean, and we're just looking. I just saw the choral score in the music room. We never sang it, but I was thinking like, Handel wrote this whole thing. Really? That's a lot of music to write for one man. um, but when I was in freshman year, I learned that was when I learned Für Elise. Um, and the music director at the time, he was there for a year. Um, he said, you need to get piano lessons like ASAP. I mean, that was like one thing that I learned is he says you need to, you need to work on your scales, you need to work on your arpeggios, you need to work on all these, things. And I'm thinking, who cares about scales and arpeggios when you could play Bach and, or Beethoven? At the time, I didn't really know Bach, but um, Beethoven and Chopin, why would you want to spend your time with scales and arpeggios? Well, you know, here I am eating my words. You need to learn your scales and arpeggios. Um, so that was my freshman year. My sophomore year in high school, I learned the I think it was Claire de Lune debut. No, because that was actually when I started to study with a music teacher at a local church. Ironically, it's the same one where I'm studying organ. Um, it's I gotta think. I gotta think here. I have to think. It's the Chopin Prelude in D flat major. It's number 15. It's the Raindrop Prelude. I learned that my freshman year. Oh, I think I got, like, let me see here. Für Elise, I played Für Elise at solo ensemble, and I think I got a second place on that, and that was like a class B, a second or first, I forget. I have to go and dig up the medals. um, and then the Raindrop Prelude was in, that was in a class A. All my pieces after Für Elise was in class A. Um, and so uh I got a first place on everything. One of them I got a starred first. It was a Chopin impromptu, or not an impromptu, but a Chopin Nocturne, which that one has a kind of a funny story. Uh, so anyways, so I studied piano a little bit with this girl, older girl at the church building, and I didn't really like learn much, but it was my first exposure to like formal music lessons, I guess, like with an actual music lesson book and a theory book. And yeah, one of the things we had to do was play preludes and postlude for the church services. So we had to learn these hymns, which I had the hardest time doing because I wasn't exposed to that type of music, and it was just really hard. Um so yeah, my my junior year, um I'm trying to think, what did I play in my junior year? My junior year I played the Claire de Lune, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Claire de Lune. Um and uh that one I got a first place on. And throughout all this time when I'm learning these piano pieces in school, like, I'm singing in the choir, um and I'm trying to learn little bits here and there as I can within the musical atmosphere. Like when I was learning the movement of the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata, I ran across a what I now know is a double sharp. It was a note and it had an X next to it. And I didn't know what that was. And eventually, after enough teeth pulling and toenail pulling, I was able to get the answer out of my choir teacher. And he told me, "Oh, it's a double sharp. It means that you just play two half steps." It's like, "Oh, that's not too hard." Um, and then I saw what the cancellation of the double sharp was later on in that piece of music. It's like, okay, well, this must mean to reduce one of your double sharps or whatever, or reduce one of your natural half steps or whatever. Um, so yeah, I learned a little bit here and there. I didn't have like a theory class. I signed up for the theory class, but because nobody like bothers signing up for the theory class, it was never taught. Although there's like 4 students that showed up for it or that wanted to take it, but yeah. Now this is just not enough to have a real class. Like, seriously? That sucks. Um so yeah. Um my sophomore year I did the Prelude in D flat major, and then I did Clair de Lune by Debussy. Um and then I did Beethoven. It was, I think it's adagio cantabile from the, I forget which sonata. It's from the sonata that starts off adagio and then it goes like, it's got, oh my gosh, I can't think of it. The movements I played, I think was in like A flat major. So whatever that key is in the minor, I think it's F minor, but that doesn't sound right. I don't know. It sounds right, but it doesn't sound right to the piece. Um, but anyways, I played the adagio. It's a popular piano one. Da 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 da. That's like the melody. Uh so I played that, and then after that I played oh gosh. I thought there was a another piece in there. I can't remember. I maybe I let's see. I think at that point I think I had two senior years. Yeah, that's kind of weird. I love being in senior high so much. I had two graduations, kind of. No. Um, what after I played the adagio for the solo ensemble thing, I did the Clair de Lune. I think that was my first sophomore year, but I my first senior year. I could be wrong. Um, and then I moved to another town, and there I took their theory class. There's still like four of us, four or five, but we still was able to have the theory class. So I took the advanced music theory class, um, which is basically like music theory for university, which really, if you're a freshman, you should be studying music theory, like part writing and counterpoint and all that stuff. So that's basically what this was. We studied from the seventh edition of Music in Practice and Performance or something like that. Music in Practice. Maybe it's just Music in Practice. I don't know. It is something like that. It's like some Bruce Burnward book and somebody else. I don't know. I think they're like on their ninth edition right now. But that was my first actual real music theory textbook that talks about part writing and all that other stuff. So I have that. um let's see. So this is when it gets to the fun part with my piano. Um I have been doing solo and ensemble pretty much since my 8th freshman year with piano. Vocal music, I was doing it since my 7th year. Um so choral music, or vocal music, doing vocal solos, I was singing in a choir. So yeah, I had a vocal teacher. Piano, I never really had a piano teacher per se. I mean, I had my little stint, my second year of high school, my sophomore year, but nothing real extensive. So I get into my last year of high school. I'm working on a Chopin Nocturne in E minor. I think it's a posthumous or posthumous or however you say that word. It was published after his death. It's really pretty. Um, so I am working on this, and the choir, the choir director, he comes up to me and he's asking me, he says, "Oh, you're working on a piano piece for solo and ensemble." Like, yeah. And he's like, "Do you have a teacher?" Like, no. Well, the rules state that you're supposed to have a teacher. I'm like, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. And he's like, well, it's already like what is it? Like a week before the contest, so I can't pull you out. It's like, oh, darn, because that's the last thing I want to do is be pulled out of, music contests that I didn't know the full rules because nobody tells me these things. Yeah. So, he says, well, um, can you play your piece? I was like, yeah. So I sit down at the piano and I'm playing for this music teacher, which I really don't know him because I've only been at that school for like a year, and it was my last year, and I was just there, like, just the choir, and he taught the theory. So, like, I was in a couple of his classes, but like to play for him, because I didn't have a real relationship to know what type of a person he was, I was really nervous. So I played this nocturne for him, and he says, "I wouldn't be surprised if you score anything at all," because it was really bad. Um and so he's just like, he was just it was not very encouraging. So yeah. So come to pass at the actual contest, which is actually held at the high school, um we let's see, I played the piece of music, um and despite everything, there was the fourth, no, the third page had a bunch of like runs and trills and all that other stuff that I never really learned. It was like I was piecing it together based off audio recordings and trying to do what I can do with little technique that I have, because at this point I still wasn't working on scales or anything like that. Um so the judge, I don't know who the judge was, but they actually let me go on to state with that. And it was kind of funny because, just a couple days or a couple weeks before, here I played for the choir director, and he says, "Well, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't, score anything because it's so horrible." um, but just to show that there's music is not something that can be set in stone as far as like performance, because there's stuff that happens that you cannot control. Um, it's just the nature of, just the nature of what it is. So, uh, I, I remember I was passing by him in the hallways, and I says, "Hey, um, I made it to state on my piano solo." And he's like, "Yeah, I see." And he like walks by. It's just like really weird turn of events. Really weird turn of events. Now, I do remember after that point, I think there's like a month or a month and a half after that point, um, I I was, see, I was doing a intern ship thing at the local elementary school in the music. Uh, and I was talking with the music teacher there, who I was in school with when I was in elementary school, which is kind of funny. But I was talking with her, and I says, "Hey, do you know of anyone that can help me with my piano solo? Because I need some guidance." And she's like, "Oh, well, my husband's a piano teacher." So I got in touch with him, and I started working with him, and I really, really liked it. Like, he was a really awesome teacher. Um, uh he knew my limitations like visually, so he says, I want like, you are required to record your lessons, you're not allowed to not record your lessons. So I literally had to record my lessons, and that was what we did. We recorded my music lessons, my piano lessons. And we worked out these little turns and runs and trills and all the stuff that was in this piece. And when I went to state, I think I got a second place on that, if I remember correctly. Um, but yeah, so that's pretty much my music training in high school. After I left high school, I moved to the capital city of the state in which I live currently. So I moved there. I um was doing some research into different churches, because I mean, even when I was in high school, I was singing in choir, and I started to sing in church choirs. I think I started singing church choirs because the piano teacher that I had in my sophomore year was, you know, a member of the church or whatever. So it's like, yeah, okay. So I joined the choir through her. Um, and so I started singing more in like church choirs and stuff. So I was looking into the different churches, uh, and I found a church that was like smack dab in the middle of town. I can't speak, smack dab in the middle of town. And so I went and I checked it out, and it's like, wow, this is a really, really big place. And so I met with the music director, and like, if you could say, like, if I could say that I met Jesus in the flesh, this person would be him. I kid you not. Um, oh my gosh, he like, one of our first meetings, he says, well, come and sit down in my office, just let's have a Coke or whatever. I mean, it wasn't like let's have a Coke, but it was very warm, friendly, encouraging. And he took uh a an interest in helping my musical endeavors, um in his in however manner he could. I mean, he is a full-time organist and music director, so he had a lot of stuff on his plate that he always had to do. And unfortunately, most of it was not practicing organ. um so he had a lot of paperwork and busy work, basically, which I saw the back end of church music, and it's ugly. It's just, it's really ugly. um yeah. But he, I played a little bit for him, and he is encouraging, and we started this arrangement thing where uh I I had offered to help out in the music library, or somehow I was offering to help in the music library, and he says, "Oh, well, you know what you could do? We have these filing cabinets, and we need to have the music numbered for the choir. Like, they were stamped with the library number, but they didn't have individual folder numbers. So I had to go through the library and number all these pieces. Now, this is the music library in this place had, I kid you not, over 1,000. That is one comma or point or full stop, however you want to call it, 000 plus pieces of music in it. And this is just in the SATB music library alone. This doesn't include the women's choir, the children's choir, nor like the men's choir, although there's not really much in the men's choir. But There was a small library for male choir for barbershops and things like that. Um, so yeah, so I got very very up close and personal with all the wealth of music that was that I was exposed to by just numbering these pieces. Every once in a while I'd open it up and I'd try to, read through it or whatever, and oh, this sounds interesting. Oh yeah, I remember singing this. Because I was there long enough to be able to, to recognize the pieces that we've sung in the church choirs there. Um and in exchange of me helping out in the music library, I was given access to practice on virtually any keyboard I could get my hands on outside the organ. I think the organ was off limits. There was two organs. There was the main organ in the choir loft, which had four manuals. Um, I don't know exactly like the stops and things like that, but um, if you look on, I don't know. I'll have to see if I could somehow insert a picture, but I don't know how to do that yet, so maybe you won't see it. Um, but either way, it's four manuals. The thing is huge. Like, you played the lower notes and the pedals. Literally, you can feel those notes. Some of the bass notes. It's like, yeah, it's not about hearing them. It's like you gotta feel them. um, yeah. So I was given access to practice on the various pianos, mostly pianos. They did have one two manual harpsichord. I did play a little bit on that, practiced a little bit on that with some Bach for, just something different. I was told when I was there that, you don't always want to be practicing on the same instrument, that you want to kind of change it a little bit to kind of get a different feel of different pianos, because they're going to be different uh, action, touch weight, and all that stuff. Everything is just going to be different. If you go to a grand piano to an upright, everything's going to be different. If you go from an upright to a grand piano of a different model or whatever, it's going to be different again. So, yeah, I was extremely blessed in this manner where I had one time, I think I counted 10 different pianos, upright and grand pianos, um, at this building. There was one instrument that I practiced on particularly um, a lot because it was extremely, I mean, not only was it nice on like what it looked like, but just the action, the tone quality, everything about it was nice. And I called that piano my baby. It was it's a, if I remember correctly, it's a 7 foot Steinway piano. Um and I had all these different, I had a Baldwin, a couple Yamaha like uprights. I think, yeah, there's a Kauai baby grand that I was able to practice on. The harpsichord, which is tucked away in a little room. And that's too one of the nice things is all of these pianos were just in a different part of the church building. So it's like I got a different piano to work on and a different room to practice. So it's like everything was different. Some rooms were colder, some rooms were warmer, some rooms had no windows, some rooms, I think if I remember correctly, I think most of the rooms had windows. Um, if, yeah, I'm pretty sure all the rooms that I remember practicing in had a outside window, at least one outside window. So that was nice. Um, and so on top of this, we um we had to sing. I sang in the choir, and we sang pretty much every Sunday. In addition, we did TV recordings. So I was able to kind of get a little bit of exposure into TV recording and stuff, how that works. Um, and then just with being in the choir, being exposed to high quality, good choral music, and also good rehearsal practices, like if he says, rehearsal starts at 7 o'clock, it started at 7 o'clock. um we started with like stretches and vocal warm-ups, and it was immediately off to work. We touched a lot of music within one night. Of course, our rehearsals were like 2 hours long. um Sometimes I think we had a break in the middle. um and so yeah, but it was a lot of work that we did, but the quality of music that we did was just so much more higher. Like, there were people that would just come to visit, and they would go and worship at this church, and they would say, "Your choir sounds immaculate. Do you have professional singers?" And the music director will say, "No, everyone is a volunteer." um and when I joined, I think there's about 80 members in the large main choir. um and so just being exposed to fine choir music, uh being we did like large orchestral work, sometimes with the chamber orchestra. Like, we did parts of um Mozart. We did like Mozart's Requiem. We did Handel's Messiah. uh just pieces of John Rutter, various pieces. I think we did that at least once a year, was a large piece of choir music. um and so I was learning so much when I was not only at the church, but also even outside, because it was a large town that I was living in. I bought tickets to the concerts, to the symphony orchestra, so I went to hear fine pianists. I also went to the university and heard piano recitals there performed by piano faculty there. I went to one of the guys did Beethoven, like he played all the Beethoven sonatas. And I didn't go to all of them, but I went to the Moonlight, I went to the Appassionata. I think there's another one I went to. Um, I can't remember, but I for sure went to at least two or three of those. Um, so it just being in a large town, there's so much more opportunity to expose yourself to find music. I went to hear other organists. There was one gentleman I was working with for a little bit, and he is a very, very fine organist, and pianist. Like, you could put anything in front of him and he could just read it. That is how good he is. Um, and so sometimes there are some of those people that are just so good they don't know how to teach. He was kind of like that. um, and so just working with his weird quirkiness for a little bit was kind of interesting and nice. Um, but yeah, after that, I think that was a at least a 10 year or so, give or take, that I was participating in the music there. Um, one thing I remember learning when I was there at the church is I was helping with every once in a while. I'd get the opportunity to help with the organ tuning. So I basically organ tuning, deals with lengthening and shortening of the pipes. um, and so you need to have somebody at the console which is where the manuals, the keyboards are, to play the notes, because the pipes are more than likely not in the same room sometimes. Um, but you have to have someone play the notes on the keyboard, and the tuner will, do what he needs to do to tune the pipe to make sure that it's in tune. Um, so I I was doing this a couple times, and after one of these times, I was talking with him about um the thing of, I was working through the Hennen virtuoso pianist, uh not say textbook, but music book. And I told him that I was on like exercise 8 or 9 or something like that. And he says, "Oh," um and he starts questioning. He says, "Well, you can play number, I don't know, well, you could play number 3 in the key of C. Can you play in the key of A flat? Can you play it in the key of G major? Can you play it in uh, A minor? Can you play it in F minor?" And he's like throwing out these keys, and I'm like, "No, I can only play it in the key of C because that's all it's written in." And he says, "Well, he says, if you transpose those exercises into the various keys, um, you can thank me later," something along that. But he basically says, he's basically saying that, um, like, if you transpose your music, if your finger drills into different keys, you will expose your fingers to different combinations of note patterns on the keyboard, because on the piano there's black and white keys, um and so yeah, you kind of gotta do that. Yeah, so there's that. And then, like, you're just exposed to the different contour of the keyboard. You're getting a bigger, larger geographical understanding of the different keys by playing in these different keys. Um, and also at this time, this is also when I was working on, I started to take scales and arpeggios and all that technical stuff that I never learned a bit more seriously, because I could start to see where my repertoire was lacking and where my technique was not helping, that I was just running into a block. Um, and so I started to work on that stuff more seriously. So I picked up a nice book. I love this book. It's called Mastering the Scales and Arpeggios. And basically it has all the scales. Um, it has all the different forms, like the contrary motion. It has scales in six, sevens, not sevens, thirds and sixes. It has scales in octaves. It has the different arpeggios, the different dominant chord, the dominant 7 arpeggios. It's got all kinds of stuff in it. And so I picked up this book, um, and when I was after some years, actually, when I left this town and I went to university in another town, um, I started to break them up into a little bit more methodical method of learning, because when I went to university, this is like the third stage of my musical learning education, whatever. Um, I I was I we had to play the scales not only in octaves but also in sixes and thirds and tens, and we had to do arpeggios and all this stuff, and I was like totally green to everything. So I was like learning everything as I was supposed to be learning it. I don't know. Um so yeah. Um Before I went to university, um a little step back, I presented a recital at the church, and it it holds a very special place in my heart. Um, because every piece that I played was essentially it was in honor of family or friends, more mostly friends and close mentors that I had when I was there that encouraged me in a good way. Um, Unfortunately, I mean, with family, I can't really say much, but they, my stepdad, he did show me where middle D was. And mom did say that Für Elise is her, favorite piano piece of music. Um, so the fact that there's that, and Für Elise, I think, was one of the first classical pieces that I took up uh, as far as learning piano. I didn't go through any lesson books or anything, so I just like learned the basics, and then I started picking up classical music. Um, so all of those pieces that I played on that recital was in honor of um, close friends, family, and mentors that helped me get to that point because I was on an extreme high, like musical high at that point. And I go to university with you know, every gusto I've got. And I was practicing at least 4 to 6 hours, sometimes more, a day. And this is even before I went to university. I practiced a lot. Very seldom this would happen, but once in a while I'd practice 8 hours. Um, but that was extremely rare because I would be like super tired. But the next day it's like I don't want to practice. So I didn't do that too often, but usually it's between four to six on average. Um, I went to university. I had learned a prelude and fugue, and then I learned like that second semester. I learned an impromptu, which I've always wanted to learn. Uh, and then in between my first and second year at university, um, I was handed um the sonata that kind of broke everything. Um, it was heavier than I could bear. Um, in the book of Genesis of the Holy Scriptures, God is punishing Cain for have killed Abel, and Cain says, "My punishment is more than I can bear." Um, this sonata was exactly like that. It was more than I can bear. I knew it, and my piano professor, he knew it. He knew it was technically beyond my ability, but he said, because of your degree, you have to play this. It's like, okay. Um, so yeah. So I learned 30 some odd pages. The piece is about just over 30 pages. And I learned the first movement and the last movement over the summer. By the time I got back, I was tired. Like, I was just dead tired. Now, usually, if I'm learning a large piece of music like this, I won't learn it in 3 months because I need time to actually absorb everything. Um, when I came back to school that semester or next semester after the summer, I was like really, really mentally exhausted. And, this is before the theory and everything else really started kicking in. Um, so it wasn't like I could just focus on piano because when you're at university, you got to take theory and history and ear training and all these courses that are just taking up time in your life. Um, and so like I get back to school and I play him the piece of music, this sonata, and he starts ripping it apart, everything. Like the fingering is wrong, the articulation is wrong, the scale needs to be fingered correctly, and all, everything was just not going well. Fast forward to the end of the semester, I have to play this thing at a public recital. He's going by and giving everybody kudos, and he comes to me, and he's got a very thick accent of like uh like Israeli or something like that, or uh like Romanian. I don't know, like one of those countries that has those thick accents. And he says to me, "Don't let me down." Um, but he said it obviously in his, you know, whatever manner of voice. He did not say it so quickly. Is like, "Don't let me down," or something like that. Um, and then he goes on. It's like, "Oh, thanks for the encouragement." So then, my piece is in the middle of the performance, or in the middle of the recital. It's a full studio recital. So, I go up there, and the bench is a little bit too high, but I says, "Well, I'll just deal with it." Um, and so I played the first chord, and the first chord is wrong. It's like, "Oh, well, I will just continue as I was." And the further I got into this piece, the more it fell apart. And the more I started to get tense, and just things were not going right. I started to get tense in the forearm. The finger knuckles were getting all stiff, and it was just like I just needed to get through the piece. It was kind of like, I don't know, musical crucifixion, or if you could say such a thing, where everything horrible and hideous was being exposed right there in front of everybody. That was what it was like. And so at the end of the thing, I don't even know if I bowed. I don't think I bowed. I was not pleased with the whole thing. Um, Walked off, and I had to sit and listen to everyone else. Meanwhile, I'm dreading my next lesson because I know it's not going to be pretty. So the next lesson, we have a little talk, which um, basically told me, "Okay, if this guy don't care, I'm done. Um, I'm done." So this is in the middle of my second year. In the last half of my second year, um, I very quickly began to just not care about piano. And eventually it crept into the other subjects, the theory, the history, everything. I just showed up for class just enough to get by. Choir, we had to sing in a large ensemble or play in a large ensemble or whatever. But choir, I showed up just enough to learn the music and get the music in my head because I was really good at memorizing choir music. After I had the choir music memorized, I I stopped showing up for rehearsal. It's like, that was how much I did not care. And to seal the deal and everything, um I went from practicing 4 to 6 hours a day, 4 to 6 hours a day, to practicing 2 hours a week, if that. I'd practice the day before my piano lesson, and then I'd practice the day, like an hour before my piano lesson. So that was my practicing, it was just enough to get by. And I think at this point, like, my piano teacher could tell something was wrong, but he couldn't really put his finger on it. He could tell something was wrong, but he didn't know what, like, he just didn't know what to do. Like, we took a step back from, like, literally from everything. Um he I know we started working through like a Kabbalisky um children's pieces or something like that. So I picked some pieces out of there and, tried to learn those. And he's trying to get me to set read music with my eyes, which obviously doesn't work because I don't see the notes. One point we're talking about chord progressions and stuff. Um, and he says, he's asking me if I've played these things. Like, example would be like a 1 4 5 1 progression. It's basically like a chord progression is like a musical thought using um notes that are stacked on top of each other that sound harmoniously pretty together. Um so we were talking about these, and I says, "No, I've never played those. I don't know what they are. I don't understand them. I'm sure we've talked about them in theory class, but I don't have any application to them, so I don't know what they are." And he's like, "You've never learned how to play common progressions." Nope. And that was like when he started to see that, like, he may have asked too much of me too soon. Um but it is what it is. So we started working a little bit on that basic stuff type thing. But by this point the damage had already been done, and I was just doing enough just to get the grade and just get out of his studio, because I was I was extremely hurt by what he had told me that previous year at the end of the Haydn Sonata thing. At the one point, you need a teacher to support you, and they don't. That's when it's like, I'm done. Not doing this anymore. And it takes a long time to recover from something like that if you don't have, you know, someone who really wants to invest in what you have. Um, so I finished out that semester, I finished out that year. I think I ended up getting an F in my oral skills, like my ear training and sight singing class, because again, I just didn't care. I think I got a D or a C in history and theory. I don't know. Again, I just didn't care. And the thing is, I love history and I love theory. But yeah. Um thinking on I do know I took conducting, and I got a D in conducting because I was still hurt from the previous year. Um so thinking on things now, like university study, if I could do it again, I would have done things drastically different. I would have seen if I could do like lessons over the internet or something before enrolling in school with him. Um, I would have probably signed up for the piano courses, like for it's your piano for non-pianists. Because I was a pianist, I didn't have to take the courses, but because my technique is so horrible, I should have took those courses. And I remember signing up for classes and, kind of up in the air about whether or not if I should take those courses. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so let me see. I would have, what else would I have done? I don't know. I there's a lot of things I could learn from that. Um a lot of things I didn't know going into it, a lot of things my piano professor didn't know going into it. Um it was, I don't want to say it was anyone's fault, it was just what it was. Um Apparently it was written in my book that I would screw up on that recital, um in front of, however many people were there, and completely let my music professor down. But yeah. Um but after I left university, this is now going into pretty much where we're at right now. Um I moved back to where I came from, and um oh, someone's oh, crap. I'm not going to deal with that right now. um so after coming back from university, um I um I moved back to where I was, and um I was looking for a piano teacher, but not in the sense of learning to play piano from where I left off at, but learning to play piano differently. Um, at this point, I'd learned enough about my piano and just myself that I had to learn differently. I couldn't continue to memorize from printed music the way that I used to. Um, and at this point, when I was at university, I think it was in the middle of my fourth semester um of music theory, because I remember looking through the syllabus and I found some notes on uh Braille. It was somewhere along there that I had learned about the Braille music code. And so I got really excited because I found a method that I was already acquainted with the Braille letters and reading and things like that. A little bit with reading, but mostly with just the letters. Um, and so um, I was really excited that I could learn how to read music in Braille. And I remember I presented it to the piano professor, and he says, "Well, you can learn that on your own. Don't involve me." Yeah. Um. So it was, yeah. So I was looking for someone who would be able to help me in these special areas where your average teacher isn't going to know what to do, or maybe they may not want to invest that much time in it. Um so I I did that, and oops, I don't know what that just did. Um I found a teacher in the area, and I contacted her and I says, "Yeah, I found your email on some website." No clue what website it was, but it said that she had worked with autistic students. I says, "Well, autistic and blindness are not the same, but uh to work with autistic students, I'm sure you have to have a little bit of compassion and um different mindset of how to teach them in the same way you would with a blind person." So, yeah. Um so we met a couple times. I played for her, um and at this point, I mean, obviously I could like transpose better. I could like do scales better and things. I could play pieces better, but obviously right now they're like null and void. um but we met a couple times. I played some music for her. We met again, and this is one of those things that I will not forget. She actually took the time to do almost like a music diagnostic. Um, she tested my ear and she tested my visual. She made the like with the ear. She basically played intervals and melodies and things, and I had to sing them back. I had to play. I didn't have to play them back. I had to sing them back. Um, and I could do it reasonably well with solfege and numbers. Um, and then she gave me a piece of music, which is not horribly that hard. Um, and she made it large enough that so I could see it. Like I could see the notes. Like I could tell where the notes were. I could tell where the staff was, and it was reasonably, I didn't have to look really close. Um, I was looking at this music, and she gave me a starting note, and for the life of me, I could not sing that second pitch. Like, I could not get my brain connection, could not make the connection from what I was seeing to what I was supposed to sing. Um, and so she had came to the conclusion, um, if you are going to continue with music, you need to work on ear training, like really work on ear training, identifying intervals, singing intervals, being able to anticipate intervals, and scales and all this stuff. And then you need to work on like learning how to read music in another medium. In this case, using Braille. Because even she said you could learn a lot by ear, but you can't learn everything by ear. So even she acknowledged um, that I would have to eventually learn um, music, um, how to read music in some way, shape, or form. Then, uh, I think a week later or something like that. After that, um, I got an email. She said she got offered another job in another town, not anywhere near where I was, and just like that, she was gone. Um, and that was pretty much um my last musical exposure with really anyone. Um, my friend, I used to play a lot for my friend, um, and if she wanted to hear me play, she literally had to pull my teeth and pull my toenails to get me to the piano to play music. Um, and even and even then, like for someone who has been doing something for 20 plus years, give or take, um, and like it seems like overnight they stop. That just that's not normal. Something happened um to cause that desire to just cease. Um no, the there's still, I'm still active a little bit in music. Like, I've sung in different church choirs, but as far as piano, I have not really pursued anything in piano or any keyboard instrument. I just, play through what I knew. Um, at one point I was asked to do Prelude, and I virtually just played the same three pieces. Three or four pieces in different orders with different cuts because I knew him so well. Um, so yeah, that was how bad things had gotten. Um, and hopefully, working with a music person, um, it is, as far as just myself, learning how to trust a teacher in this realm is not going to be easy. Um, there's a lot that I'm gonna have to get over, um, in this area of working with another person. Um, and even like earlier this week at the little at the lesson organ thing, whatever. I don't really want to call them lessons, but even when I was in Madison, I never really called them lessons or whatever. Um, but I um I more or less call him like guidance or mentoring or something, because it's not like I need to know how to read the notes on a staff or anything. It's more or less, you know, can you share something with me that I don't know? Or I would like to learn what it is that you do. Um, and, you know, I mean, and that's one of those things. Back in the day, when you did like mentorship, like if you were studying music with a great composer, you had to do all the dirty work um, to show your worth. And gradually, as you were learning and gaining, getting better at your skill, you could eventually then do more prestigious work. Like I would say with me, like when I was with the church working in the library, I would consider that, dirty work. Nobody wants to do that, but it was something I did, and ironically, I kind of enjoyed it. And did I get to play often? Like did I get to play a lot at the services? Um More intimate settings, yeah. Uh I remember I came back from university. Um I had made an attempt of the B flat minor prelude, and I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't do it. I started the piece, and somewhere along the lines I got up and I left. I couldn't do it. And the at that time it was the organist, like the sub organist, the under organist of the main organist. She had to look and see, holy crap, what key is she in? And she sees B flat minor. And so she has to improvise something off of B flat minor to, to kind of bridge everything together. And, that's just it. There's so much that happened that even performing, playing pieces that I knew well, I cannot do that. Um, so I'm hoping after this now 10-year hiatus of not really doing anything, I'm hoping that it will allow me to come into music playing with keyboard, regardless piano, organ, harpsichord, whatever, um, differently, um, you know, coming at it with a different perspective, um, trying to overcome whatever crap happened in the past that obviously can't be changed. But yeah, um, there's a couple little quotes or whatever mentioning um that one of them, my mentor at the church, uh he had said, he's always saying things like these. He's always saying things like, you know never let yourself do anything below what you can do. Basically, a more briefer way of saying it is, keep your standards high and don't let them slip. That was one that he's always constantly telling me. Never let yourself do anything less than what you can do. Uh, the the other one um was one that I don't know where I found it, but I have it in the photo gallery. Um, and it says something along the lines of, uh, it's not getting easier, you're just getting better. um, so those are just a couple of the little tidbits that I've recently been thinking on uh musing on as I work through this little thing on the organ that I've never played before, playing an instrument that I've never played before, trying to relearn essentially how to do music. Um, and I'm hoping in due time I will get the opportunity to work with reading reading braille music. Um, Now that I'm done with that horrible class, horrible in the sense that it just took way, way, way too long. Um, I'm not gonna do a big, blah thing about it, but it just took way, way too long. Um, it literally killed every joy of wanting to read that I wanted to read. Because of the structure, it just took way too long. So, even with reading, I'm hoping like getting books translated into braille and being able to read them. Now that I mean, obviously, I wouldn't say I know all the contractions. I don't. I mean, especially the past couple months, everything just went one ear and out the other, or in one hand and out the other, just to get through the course, because I was on a sincere time crunch and I had to finish the course. Um and so that let me see here. I'm hoping, taking a step back, working with books that I want to read, material that I want to read, material that's good and high quality, will help me. And the same with the music, that it will help me with reading reading music, learning to read music and learning to sing, learning to enjoy music again. One thing, as a little note, um when I was at the university, I was at this point I was practicing at a church where I was locally singing in the choir at the church, and I was practicing on the piano there. That place also had that place had a very fine acoustics, um, beautiful pipe organ. I think that one was a two manual organ. Um, and It also had a 9-foot concert grand in the sanctuary, like right there. So that was another instrument that I was able to get exposure to enjoy just the peacefulness of practicing. But one of the things mentioning about this is I was at the church and I was I had some Bach music transcribed into Braille. And so at this point I was just bare bones scratching the basics of reading. Now I'm reading at the keyboard. Now the most interesting thing happened. When you read Braille, you have to read one hand, then the other. And when you put the hands together, you have to memorize it, essentially. So you have to be really good at listening and really good at memorizing. Um, so I remember I was reading through the left hand and the right hand, uh, memorizing in that sense. Now, this is with Braille, so I'm reading the dots on the page with my finger. So when it came to putting the music together with both hands together, a very unusual thing had happened that I had never experienced before. As I was playing the pitches on the piano, putting the hands together, as I was playing these pitches, I could see the note of the Braille in my mind's eye. Like I could see the Braille shape of that pitch and rhythm in my mind. Now, I have never experienced this with printed music, choir music, or piano, or any other. Never have I been able to experience this. But with Braille, I instinctively remember this because I remember it's like, I wonder if this is what it's like when people say they have photographic memory or something like that. I don't know. Or when they say they could see the notes in their mind. Just thinking on that type of thing, it's like, wow, what am I missing? What have I not been taught in music that is holding me back? Not only with just technique, but even with Braille. So yeah, that's in short my little music, what's it call it, happy go thing, whatever. So yeah. Okay, so I will chit chat with you guys later. Bye.